All right, so we are gathered via Zoom for another sculpture forum, um, and we have a small group of people here today to talk about exhibition at Pace Gallery of the work of Louise Nevelson, and I'm being joined by Mallary Marks, wonderful young artist with a brand new dog. Um, and and Brandt Junceau, who is one of our regulars, and Jock, the other regular. Rachael Bohlander is recording this entire thing, and we are also joined by the exciting young sculptor Lydia Gladkova and a wonderful young artist, Emily Nam, exciting young artist. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. Louise Nevelson. Ah, Okay, so the exhibition at Pace contains a lot of quite large works, large late works, I believe, from the 80s, many of them. The gallery had the walls painted grey and the lights dimmed, and the works are all painted matte black. It was a very strange experience, and I found it rather kind of what's the word I would use? Oppressive. I think oppressive. Um, but having said that, I will open it up. Anybody want to jump in?
I don't know the artist's biography, but I had a distinct impression of a kind of a post-traumatic or almost post-czarist or totalitarian regime feeling.
She was born in the Ukraine in 1899. I'm not sure. I have not looked carefully to see when she came to America and how old she was.
I think
Yeah, I
from
don't.
the research that I've looked into, there was a lot of oppression and internal investigation. And I don't know her work that well. And this is the first time I've only ever seen it on a site-specific installation in an urban landscape. So this is also new to me, seeing it in that way. And it was all very dark. But there is definitely this idea of the shadow and darkness, and maybe stemming from what you're implying from a traumatic or challenging childhood or investigation that is coming out in those.
That kind of general environment of obscurity and secrets.
Mm. Yeah, and
With
memories,
reticence.
and that comes from that. I mean, I know it's called shadow, but there is that feeling of those shadow box, which, as kids you'd store your memories in, and there is a very psycho-emotional aspect to it.
Sorry, say that again. A very
Psycho-emotional, like there is this relationship of collecting all these found objects and then putting them all together, and that also brings this relationship from our own life. And this, I was just thinking a lot about this idea of memories and collecting all their memories from her life and putting them, kind of collaging them together, which seems to be a really big part of the show.
It's a funny thing about that collage impulse, because she has this really strong impulse to make form of things, but seems to care not so much about forms, small f. I mean, she really loves bas relief, but seems to have very little preference or affection for the forms that she arranges. It seems like she really puts the weight of everything on arrangement and containment. And
I also thought that, because I think I wondered when she decided to rest on a form, and was it thought out about. I didn't feel that the form was so much thought out. It was about the arrangement. But then what gave her the satisfaction that that was the form she decided to end with or leave it at? And maybe there was so many other possibilities.
it feels like there's a kind of contest between self-assertion and concealment. And maybe that's the kind of point that you speak of when it's done, or when I'm satisfied.
Mm.
Yeah, in the gallery, they seem so stiff and shallow and dense.
Which in bas-relief is a good thing.
Well, it's that she sort of solved everything by uniting a whole bunch of different elements on the plane and then painting the plane that matte black. And it's well, Nevelson sort of never breaks the plane, and it results in a kind of lifelessness that oppressive. Garth used the word oppressive, and it's suffocating for me that I can't get into the work, or and there's extreme elegance and exquisiteness to Nevelson's work, but she just it doesn't break the plane.
That's a really kind of fertile metaphor in this context. I mean, it makes you aware that there's something that goes on behind the surface, wherever that is, that you're sort of let into, but and then in other ways not informed, not and you're sort of introduced to something that you can't share. It's very emotionally fraught, I find.
Emotionally what?
Fraught.
Fraught.
And I would say, that oppression, like, it's a very strong feeling, but that's sort of like the terrain of her poetry. She's very strong.
Yeah, Jock, perhaps instead of saying she never breaks the plane, and just simply say she never breaks. What a formidable presence, what a formidable person. I saw her exhibition in a Jewish museum, maybe in 2007. And I remember I was very interested in this personal story of hers. And it brings me back to Emily's point about secrets, how different the experience of immigration was at the time. I'm an immigrant too, but I use my real name. I never felt I have to change it. And she had to change a name, change herself, change many things. It's really a traumatic experience, and it happened starting from her early life. But what a formidable person. She is unbreakable and invincible. Invincible, that's a good word for this exhibition, I think.
I wonder if she ever lost those feelings of the early experience of immigration and sort of compliance and changing one's name, altering one's
Not compliance, that's survival.
Well, survival through compliance, right? When she anglicized her name and
No, why compliance? I don't see any in her works. I don't see any.
I see that in that boxing impulse of making things fit. In these very busy kind of frenetic arrangements inside perimeters.
You're all talking about this work and listening to you. It sounds as though the work would be quite moving. And loaded in a way. I mean, emotionally loaded. I did not feel that about the work at all. I felt excluded from the work. I mean, particularly in this exhibition, with the way it was arranged and the lighting and the coloring of the gallery walls, etc., etc.
Well, I think the exhibition was hard to access. And I think it's because of the black matte paint. It didn't have any reflection. It didn't really allow a huge amount of light. So that feeling and emotional response that we are talking about, I didn't feel that from the work itself. I felt that from getting to know who she was as a person. And we were just talking before about the small collages on the wall. I found them quite appealing because they were raw and they didn't have any overlaying concealment of the paint. And so the exhibition gave me insight into Nevelson as a person and how she makes work, because I didn't really understand that before. But if I stood in front of a sculpture, I wasn't wowed by it or moved by it in a deep emotional way. But I was moved more by the tiny collage because they were just raw material that felt more spontaneous and less, I don't know, there was a different feeling. And that was just my own response.
Yeah, as I said earlier, there's one collage that I was particularly drawn to and really liked a lot. And it was the earliest piece in the show from 1963, I think, a little collage. The rest of the collages just seemed rather kind of formally uninventive and unresolved to me. They just seemed to be. I didn't have a sense that they were this other world that you seem to be implying, Emily.
No, I'm not saying the sculpture, I mean, the collage didn't take me to another world either. But they were more a material, because their interest is in material. I'm saying the other world has come from my learning about her as an artist and understanding her
Biography, right?
biography. Yeah. Thanks, Jock.
Yeah, well, I don't know how you know, what I'm trying to say here, but there is always an issue, isn't there, between the interpreting looking at the work through an understanding of the author's biography, and trying to kind of you know, make a connection between the life lived and the work produced, and you know, if the work produced somehow or other needs to be needs the story of the life to be given separately in order for it to come to life, I have some questions about it.
No, I think that you're onto something, Garth, in that I keep thinking about the Jim Condren show that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
And I think Jim and, you know, just a whole bunch of artists are of a generation or whatever that came after Nevelson and sort of reacted against a lot of an important quality of the work in the show, in the Nevelson show that we just looked at, and it's that the work itself, it is elegant and intelligent, and but it's sort of abstract art that is very hesitant to engage with biography, except very indirectly.
Well, the big contrast between, I mean, I too was struck that we saw the Nevelson show the day after we had looked at and talked about the Jim Condren show. The things in Jim Condren's work, the bits and pieces that those objects are made out of, obviously are important. They are you know, bits and pieces of fragments of somebody's life, somebody's studio that he's picked up and carried away and made something out of. The bits and pieces that Nevelson's work is made out of don't seem to matter. They don't seem to have any value associations in themselves other than just being discarded material, stuff that broken furniture or bits and pieces of timber lying around. I mean, they don't. There's nothing particularly important or precious about the material that Nevelson's things are made out of. It's nearly all wood, and it's nearly all kind of feels like wood that's been scrapped. Whereas the Condren pieces are made out of bits and pieces that are in somehow they're precious or made to become precious.
Yeah, and not subdued by art. They're still vividly themselves.
Yeah. Whereas the pieces in bits and pieces in Nevelson's work are subdued into some kind of conglomeration where they almost disappear,
Right.
as separate elements.
That's her power. But I mean, for me, Nevelson's life and work are really, intimately, securely, definitely connected. But, she's chosen what seems to me in large measure kind of unpleasant subjects, unpleasant truths. And a certain, certain barrenness goes with that. But without it, I mean, she couldn't have said what she said. And it seems hugely apropos at the moment, as the whole world turns right and totalitarian and, kind of single party states of coercion and compliance. I thought of that, walking around those pieces. They seemed apropos of our moment.
Say some more, Brandt. Well, I'm not quite sure that I'm making the connection you're making.
These things say that a lot of things go on behind, as Jock would have it, behind the surface. And they're obscure and withheld. And the actor in society, the artist, and the social institutions are each acting on secrets and withholding information to control and to survive. And it's a kind of like a very busy-handed game going on all the time. The elements are being constantly shuffled, and the elements are, in large part kind of anonymous and repetitive as well. And there's no tone. I mean, there's no grayscale. Things are black or white, and I think the show is powerful, being kind of a black show in a dim space. I think once those works leave the gallery, they'll have a very different existence, very different feeling wherever they go. In a brightly lit museum or in anyone's home. So it was special in that way, the experience.
So the experience I had of feeling oppressed is related to what you're saying.
Yeah, I think the one goes with the other.
So I mean, are you saying that these works in some way depict a state that we are in or getting in?
Yeah. And they depict a state that she is, struggling to survive in, but she's also participating.
Well, that's my question. That's my question.
In it as an artist.
Did these works, did this exhibition, you go in that gallery and you enter this, rather gloomy world. with a lot of, I think, it felt to me like monotony
Yeah.
and repetition and darkness, which seems to me to be colluding with the kind of oppressive forces that you're referencing.
But that's exactly what I'm saying. Is that she participates in the kind of the mechanisms that she critiques or abhors.
I see. I see. I see. Yeah.
And I look at it and I see my world, my own world, and it's getting dimmer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's very depressing. I mean, but it's consistent with my sense of it as well.
Pieces also remind me of tanks, where like they're sort of with the frame and you can't see what's happening inside a tank, but it's like this very heavy thing moving forth.
That's a really funny thing because she's got this this sort of yen for late 19th century, quotidian, mediocre, ugly woodwork, and she arranges it like it's locomotives and machines and presses and arranges it like it's mechanical
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
malevolent.
Yeah. Yeah. Arranges them. That's correct. Arranges everything is pretty much arranged horizontally, vertically. Very little sense that there's a kind of organic connection between the parts.
Yeah, and that word arrangement is correct, and it's deadly. You're
Deadly. Goodness.
sorry.
Well, deadly. I don't see deadly. I don't see tanks in it. Well, cold, yes, but not everything is warm and cozy.
Yeah, flatness of arrangements. It is, that's the difference between a composition and an arrangement is big, and
Not for Whistler.
Sorry?
Not for Whistler.
Well, yeah, and that's the shortcoming of Whistler. The
Downward
well,
Whistler.
it's difficult to talk about.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right, Lydia. Not everything is warm and cozy, but what about humor? What about joy? What about love?
Yeah, all of those things happen behind the plane, sort of. You have to go into territory that is, you're uncomfortable with, whether it's love or death or, but you've got to get at those things. You've got to break the plane.
I think that stuff is so 2024.
Well,
Kash Patel runs the FBI now. It's a different world.
Well, he doesn't run my FBI.
Okay, well, anyway, I don't know what else we can say about this. It seems we have a lot of respect for the artist and a lot of respect for her achievement. At the same time, we're quite uneasy about it. Is that fair?
Fair enough.
Okay. Well, with that long silence, I think we'll finish. Thank you.